Hello, my name is Chrissy Hodges. Thank you for being at my channel. I'm an advocate for OCD, in particular pure OCD, which is also the name of my memoir, The Invisible Side of Obsessive Compulsive Disorder. I'm a certified peer support specialist working with people around the world, providing support in any stage of recovery as you are getting treatment or working toward recovery for OCD. I also run groups through my practice, 8-week closed groups, and I have an online community where you can join, meet other people with OCD, get support, and start creating some community to help as you are working toward recovery from OCD. NOCD is an app. Inside that app, you can meet other people. There are tons of resources, make connections with individuals who have OCD, and they also offer telehealth, doing ERP uh, in many, many places around the world. So check them out at nocd.com or treatmyocd.com. Today, I want to talk about one of my favorite topics, which is the physical sensations of OCD. Now, physical sensations of OCD. Let's start there. This is what makes OCD feel so real. It also makes OCD feel like it's not OCD. If OCD is manifesting physically, it can no longer be just a mental or a brain disorder. Absolutely not. And especially when things are happening in places where you did not expect them to happen when it comes to urges or like when it comes to violent and sexual intrusive thoughts. Sometimes when you're having physical sensations around those types of intrusive thoughts, images, that just makes you think to yourself, oh no, this is real. And or mine is different from everyone else's, which means I don't have OCD. Remembering that a secondary fear of OCD is that it's not OCD and I am the one person that maybe even feels like that I meet the criteria, I can see all these things, but I'm the one that doesn't have OCD. And it is interesting, and I say this a lot, we fight and fight and fight and look and Google and do whatever we can to figure out what's wrong with us. And then when we find out that this is OCD, then we fight and fight and Google and do whatever is necessary to try to prove that we don't have it. I mean, it's so bizarre. But it's so common. So I just wanted to let you know that that is. So with physical sensations, it's important to remember that typically right alongside OCD manifesting physical in whatever way in your body, you are inevitably going to think this means that this is not OCD and that this is actually real. Um, and often we say if we didn't have those feelings, whether they be, shame, guilt, disgust, any of that, but also like the actual physical feelings in our body, then it wouldn't bother us as bad as it does, but those tend to hook us. So today I'm going to go through some of the more common and normal things that I talk about on my channel when it comes to physical stuff with OCD, but then I want to talk a little bit deeper about some physical stuff and ones that I probably not mentioned before. So let's just get right into it. The sexual and violent intrusive thoughts. I want to talk about that straight up front because that's what's so confusing for people because they're intrusive thoughts with mental rituals and you're not doing a lot of physical rituals. That's when the physical sensations that you can experience with OCD could just be so jarring. They can be so confusing. They can be so terrifying that you think, oh my goodness, I have now crossed over from, intrusive thoughts, images, things like that, from a disorder to this is full on, I am engulfed in this whole experience. This must be who I am. This must be what I want. And it's just so hard to believe at that point that it's a brain disorder. But this is part of the disorder. Having OCD manifest physically is something that happens to so many of us. So when we're talking about sexual intrusive thoughts in particular, we are talking about having thought or having feelings that feel like arousal in many, many erogenous areas in your body. It can happen in the front part of you, the back part of you. It can happen in your breasts. It can happen in your mouth. It can happen in so many different areas that you are all of a sudden, when you're having intrusive thoughts, urges, when you see something, if you read something, if anything, all of a sudden you are going, am I aroused or why am I feeling sensations that are mimicking sex or sexual acts? So, for instance, if you're having intrusive thoughts about, um, if you're having sexual intrusive thoughts and all of a sudden you see like a banana, for instance, you might think to yourself, oh my goodness, why is my mouth watering? Maybe I think that's a penis, which is why the banana is here as some ERP. No, I mean, yes. But those are some of the things that can cause you to have these physical sensations. If you're having intrusive thoughts about your family members, and all of a sudden you see a family portrait and your groin moves, or you're having some sort of physical reaction. It doesn't have to be the erogenous zones either. It can also be butterflies. It can be increased heart rate, sweating. You're breathing, you're starting to breathe heavier, which of course it's like you'll start to think, why am I breathing heavier? What does that mean? But anything that's going to mimic that, the feelings of feeling aroused or feeling excited, which, hello, of course, in feeling excited, that's exactly what anxiety does. You're going to have rapid heartbeat. You're going to sweat. You're going to maybe increase breathing. You might feel this wave of this rush of anxiety, which feels like butterflies. So then once you latch on to that physical feeling and you go, oh no, that must mean this. I mean, I remember when I first got the groinal at sexual orientation OCD, that first time I got it, I went, oh no. And the groinal for me was having feelings in my vagina area. I was like, am I aroused? Is this what it feels like? And I was young too. So I really hadn't had any experience at that point. And so I just thought to myself, oh my gosh, this is what it must feel like. And why is it so much? It was almost exacerbated beyond what I could imagine any sort of arousal was. And now as an adult and being a sexual active adult, yes, the groinal syndrome for me was so much more intense than actual arousal ever feels. And that's not a bad thing. It just is. When we think about your nervous system being activated from intrusive thoughts and it manifesting physically, that makes so much sense, right? Now, all of a sudden, anything and everything that is attached to that activation of the nervous system is going to feel way more intense. As I've said in videos before, anxiety is going to push you to act. It's going to push you to do something when all this stuff is happening because your brain thinks you're in trouble. So now it's, oh my gosh, let's make you feel arousal times a million. And that's what's so scary because it feels like, oh no, this is more than I've ever felt in general arousal for some people. And so then it feels like, what if this is exactly what I want and I'm in denial about because I do feel so strongly about it. And it's important to mention that a lot of people, when they have those intrusive thoughts of arousal, will masturbate and will want to kind of get rid of that feeling or just, make it go away because they cannot stand sitting in that feeling or it feels like it just needs to be done. That becomes a compulsion. And sometimes when that happens for people, now all of a sudden there's a lot of shame around it. I acted on it. I did that act, and that must mean that I wanted the thoughts. When the compulsive piece is typically to get rid of it or to move through it, I want it to go away. And then a lot of times when people have that arousal and those feelings, there are certain rituals you may have or a certain time frame that you need to have before you can masturbate or have sex for pleasure or enjoyment because you think now I'm acting on that if this happened earlier. It's really just so it that part of it is just it's so infuriating that that's how it manifests for us. It's so unfair. But I do want you to know that it's so common, even though you might think my groinal is different or my arousal stuff is different, but it's not. It's not. For the violent intrusive thoughts, urges, you can also get arousal. You can always get any of those feelings. You can start to feel kind of that same feeling of like the excitement, maybe even butterflies. You can feel dissociated or depersonalized. And then, of course, that's going to make you feel terrified that I'm losing control of myself and I might do something. And once you kind of latch onto the depersonalization and dissociation, then it's this, oh my gosh, I can't get that because what if I get that and then I lose control and then something happens and I act on these thoughts. So being hyper fixated on please don't let my body dissociate is typically going to cause you to at least feel symptoms of dissociation the same way if you hyperfixate on I don't want to feel arousal, you're probably going to feel those symptoms of arousal. So I know I didn't cover everything, but I just wanted to make sure that you know that what you're experiencing is real when it comes to OCD. You're not the exception. These are real symptoms that happen with OCD, and they can be so intense that they can really trigger that feeling inside of you of like, this cannot be OCD at this point. It feels so real. I've mentioned this so many times before. When I was at my worst with sexual orientation OCD, I was having groinal 24/7. Even in my dreams, I was having dreams all night, and I would wake up sometimes having orgasm, and it would terrify me. And then the dreams were so vivid and it was so scary, but I was able to go through effective treatment. So that was helpful. A couple of the things that came up actually in a group this last week. So grateful for that group. And we had this discussion is, you know, and this is really going to kind of drive home some of the stuff I'm saying is that someone said along the lines of it feels like a body betrayal when we talk about OCD being egocentric, what that means is we know what we want, we know what we like and value and things like that. And then all of a sudden, these thoughts and these feelings and images sometimes are so vastly different from that. And that it's so confusing because it's like, well, if I know what I want, but then why are these happening and I can't stop them? And then now, the trifecta, the body gets involved and it feels like a body betrayal. My body is betraying me because I know who I am and what I want and what I don't want and what I'm attracted to, X, Y, and Z. But all of a sudden, my body is following this disordered part of my mind. Why can't it just follow what I want? Why can't it just know and follow what I want? And again, I want to emphasize the central nervous system. When the central nervous system gets activated, you're not really in control anymore. Don't let that trigger you. What I'm saying is you're not in control in the way that you can't control what your groin is doing. You can't control the rumination. You can't control the mental review, or sometimes now you're in this, I've got to solve this mode because my body's reacting, my mind is reacting, but your brain is really trying to keep you safe. It believes there's a threat when there's a non-threat. And so now it's activating anything and everything, right? So that a lot of ERP and a lot of managing OCD is when you're triggered, calming that part down. And sometimes that takes several days, but calming your body down, calming all of that down. So now I can practice and use my tools. Because when you're in it, again, the frontal lobe's in control, right? It is like, we're in danger, you need to ruminate, you need a mineral review, you need to do all this and look at all the danger around, which is why when you're really, really triggered, everywhere you see is what your theme is because it's on your radar. The other piece that we mentioned in group, and someone mentioned, she's very wise, is that the sad part about this. Oh, there we go. The sad part about this is, and the real grief part about this is that before a lot of this happens, when it takes hold of our physical sensations, we really do associate the things that we feel, how we're feeling, in our feelings, but then also our body sensations of, we're taught this, we have experience with this. Okay, well, if I feel, this way happy, then I must mean happy. Or if I feel sad, I must mean sad. And with OCD, it's like, again, with the betrayal piece, it's this, oh my gosh, I am taught when I'm feeling aroused, when I'm feeling butterflies and excited, that's, and I've experienced that before, that's what it means. But now all of a sudden I have to force myself to like parse out what is really excitement and what is anxiety. And that can be, that's grief worthy. It's trauma worthy. It's so many things of it's how unfair it is that I cannot trust my own body sensations. I can't trust my own feelings. Now, with a lot of practice, you can. I now know, from practicing being able to identify what emotion, what feelings in my body are associated with specific triggers. I can but from a general standpoint, I have to do a double take sometimes when something is super activated, when something is super intense, whether it's physical, whether it's emotional or whatever, and be like, is this OCD or is this real? And I hate that for us. But I just wanted to say there's a lot of grief around that. And if that's what you're experiencing, you're not alone with that. A few other things I wanted to say. Health anxiety. We health anxiety and health OCD, we don't talk about this a lot, but physical sensations in your body when it comes to health. So if you're worried that you're having a certain disease, or maybe you're having a pain somewhere, something is off, right? Because we get really triggered when we're off, when equilibrium is not at its, at where it needs to be. All of a sudden it's, oh my gosh, well, why do I feel nauseous? Oh my goodness, why does my foot hurt? Why does my hip hurt? I woke up. Why is my hand and my elbow numb, or something like that. And then we start Googling and it all goes to hell. But the health anxiety, of course, can, in the physical manifestations, can be the same. I've talked about this in my videos, like with this pain that I've had in these last few years, like me just really buying into that pain and then producing the sadness and helplessness around it. It's hard for me now. Whenever I have that pain, I can be like, okay, there it is. And now, but I really want to believe, oh my gosh, but it's there and it's real. And I have to kind of choose to believe, okay, well, it's there right now, and or it's exacerbated. So maybe I'll wait it out for a day or two, or maybe I do this, or maybe I do that, or maybe I just keep living life. And that is hard, and it makes me sad. I don't want to have to do that. Why can't I just fucking not have to deal with that? Because OCD. Um, but with health anxiety in general, health anxiety and OCD, this can happen with any sort of ailments, right? And any sort of, even like with colds and stuff like that. But then, when you're all of a sudden experiencing something and it's off, you're starting to Google and you're starting to see this can happen with sexually transmitted diseases. All of a sudden, you're like, you have a bump here, or you have this here, or it's itchy somewhere, and you're like, oh my gosh, what does this mean? And you can perseverate on that and do compulsions. Mental health disorders. Now, all of a sudden, I'm looking for symptoms of different mental health disorders. I'm Googling those symptoms. Am I really having them? Should I go have a doctor check to make sure? And now a lot of times people have the fear of psychosis. Now I'm like listening to see if I'm having an auditory delusion, or a hallucination or something like that? Or am I having mood swings? And so that means that like, what if I have bipolar disorder, ADHD, lots of other disorders. Another one that I wanted to bring up, two more things. One is, and this came up in group two, is the physical sensations that are associated with things like somatic OCD. So choking, breathing, blinking. When we start to hyperfixate on those sorts of things, that we kind of just do normally. So we breathe normally. Okay, I'm breathing normally. But if a lot of times with people with somatic OCD, that bodily sensation of needing to fixate on their breathing. What if I stop breathing? What if I need to manually do this? Or if they're eating, all of a sudden it's this, oh my gosh, do I need to chew my food more? Because what if I choke? What if I can't swallow? And of course, when you're hyperfixating on not being able to swallow, it's going to feel hard to swallow. These are things that we normally do. Blinking is the same thing. This also happens with misophonia, when you're listening to things and you're hearing things all the time. Like I hear way different noises and things get like really start to bug me. I get hyper fixated on them. If that noise doesn't stop, I'm not going to be able to sleep. If that noise doesn't stop, I'm not going to be able to work, XYZ. Other things, hyperfixating on your body stuff. Like if you may like when I'm looking down right now, I can see my nose, right? And so if I can see my nose, then all of a sudden, oh my gosh, I'm never going to be able to do anything because I'm hyperfixated on seeing my nose, or it may be something about your face or your hair or your body. So now we're getting in body dysmorphic disorder, things like that. This can take form in so many different ways where your physical becomes part of the hyperfixation and the compulsions. I'm telling you all this because this is how it all can manifest, and you may or may not know that this could be OCD. Lastly, I want to go into this physical manifestations when it comes to things like love, when it comes to things like, do I like something? Am I still passionate about something? A lot of times I'll hear people say, I had a hobby or my job, and all of a sudden I'm not sure if I enjoy my hobby anymore. You may play guitar, or you may run, or you may play video games, or there may be friend groups or something that you had, and now all of a sudden you're like, I don't feel enthusiastic about this. Why don't I have those feelings that I used to get? Maybe I don't want to be part of that friend group anymore. Maybe I don't like these people anymore. Maybe I don't like this hobby anymore. And that makes you really sad because it is something you enjoy, but now you're hyper fixating on this because you're relying on the physical emotional reaction for it. And this can also apply to romantic relationships, relationships with your kids, relationships with your family. Am I feeling the right feeling for love? Am I feeling butterflies? Am I feeling excitement? I don't feel like I'm connecting with my kids. Does that mean I don't love them enough? Now we're getting into like the bodily feelings of like, oh my gosh, I have not got butterflies around my partner, or I don't feel aroused around my partner, or when you're with your family, maybe it's like Thanksgiving, or a gathering or something. Oh my gosh, I don't feel connected to them. What if I don't love them anymore? What if I don't even like them anymore? Now we're relying on physical feelings to help us believe that we have certain feelings about stuff. So with all this, I know that you're probably sitting here going, please mention mine. And I can't get to everything, but I wanted to do kind of this plethora of all kinds of things because your physical body is very much attached to what is going on with your OCD. Now, I also want to say you might not have any physical stuff and you may not have any feelings either. And now you're thinking, oh my God, I don't. That means I don't have OCD. Remember, the secondary end fear for all of us is, what if I don't have OCD and these thoughts are real and this is real and I'm just going bonkers and I'm never going to be okay? Just know that that comes alongside all of us. So when you hear stuff and when you read stuff and you get fixated on, oh my gosh, this is not my experience, or I don't do this and that must mean this and this, see that as well as you're looking for your own reassurance, which is a compulsion, which is OCD. There's a little reassurance. Anyway, I hope this was helpful for you. I just wanted to go over this. It's always good to have a reminder for you because the physical stuff can feel so real that sometimes it's really hard to separate it. But I'm sitting here telling you, look for the compulsions, look for the hypervigilance. That's how you can, when it's really physical and you're really confused, that's how you can really recognize that this is OCD. And I'm very sorry that you're going through this. I know exactly how this feels. My OCD manifests physically with hypervigilance so much, and I just know the torture. But I also know that working on it and building the tool set to be able to manage this can be really, really helpful, and you deserve it. My website is chrissyhodges.com. Find out about all the services that I offer. If you're looking for connection, please reach out for that. And also NoCD can be found at nocd.com or treatmyocd.com. We'll see you next time. Bye.